Welcome to Paleto Bay. Not only is this place home to some of the most corrupt police officers in the country, Paleto Bay is one of the most mysterious places in the GTA universe. With the metropole city of Los Santos and the desert town of Sandy Shores, Paleto Bay makes up the so-called Holy Trinity of towns in Grand Theft Auto 5. Unlike the first two though, Paleto Bay has yet to have an exact location of where exactly the town is settled, while Los Santos is clearly based off of Los Angeles and Sandy Shores is a small town on the coast of the real-life Salton Sea, where on the western coast of the US is then Paleto Bay. That is a question that has bothered a large part of the GTA community ever since the game released. And well, I think in this video we actually have received a final and definitive answer to the question, where is Paleto Bay supposed to be? To start off, Paleto Bay has throughout the game been criminally underutilized. Despite it being a similarly sized town with Sandy Shores, then unlike Sandy, none of the storyline characters ever lived or were even somewhat related to the place. The only time that the town was used in the story was during the Blaine County Savings Bank heist.
Time to face music.
Sweet.
And then one other time during the Lamar rescue mission.
You know, tell Trevor I'm gonna be up on this hill with my rifle. I don't want to be anywhere around him when he this whole thing up.
Classic, huh? He's already planning his escape. Oh,
During recent years in GTA Online, Rockstar has somewhat tried to include Paleto Bay more into the general lore, creating the Cluckin' factory heists and giving the players an opportunity to set up their businesses there. But even then, Paleto has stayed somewhat remote from the rest of the map. Because of this disconnection from most of the activities, we actually have a lot less information about Paleto Bay than we have about just any other settlement in the game. That has only given the community fuel to investigate this rather mysterious town's whereabouts. Generally, there are three main areas that players believe to be the location of Paleto Bay. Somewhere in Northern California, somewhere in Southern California, and finally in the state of Washington. Let's firstly take a look at Washington, and for all my non-American viewers, no, we are not in fact talking about a city that is home to the White House and Donald Trump.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets.
That is Washington DC. The state of Washington is a state on the west coast. Now, the main reason people have believed Paleto Bay to be in Washington is that they imagine the whole western part of the GTA map to just basically be the entire west coast. You start off from the south where Los Santos lies and then take a drive all the way up the west coast to finally arrive somewhere in Washington. The state is also most well known for its incredible temperate climate, mountainous forests. Something that is again very similar to the Paleto Forest and Mount Chiliad. But even if you watch past natural similarities, there are also myths that connect these two. You see, it was in the Paleto Forest that a local hunterman by the name of Tanner claims to have hunted a Sasquatch, aka the mythical Bigfoot, for the last 80 years.
You lucky boy. You real lucky.
why?
I thought you was a Squatch. Nearly pulled a bullet in you. Made my goddamn fortune.
A what?
A Sasquatch.
Man, you believe in that bull?
I spent 8 years combing these woods. I've seen one. Hundreds of times. I just never got a clear shot. Here, look at this. It's fresh sketch.
Man, you just gonna carry that loose in your pocket like that?
Always. Hold on.
You shot me, you crazy looking.
Damn! I could have sworn. They're clever bastards. Some of them wear orange so that people will think they're hunters. Let's go this way.
Sasquatches, huh?
Now, if you Google where Bigfoot sightings have occurred, they are most often seen in the Pacific Northwestern Range, specifically in the forests of the Washington state. However, this theory falls apart really quickly if we take into account the setting of Grand Theft Auto 5. The game takes place in a state called San Andreas, and that fictional state is a direct in-game version of the state of California. Paleto Bay, being part of the Plain County, also falls into the same area. And so, we come to our next two options. Might Paleto Bay be either somewhere in Northern California or in Southern California near Los Angeles? Now, most often, people just make the connection of, oh well, Paleto Bay is the northernmost part of the map, therefore it must also be Northern California. And well, in this case, let's take a look at the similarities between Paleto Bay and Northern California. Firstly, although I also said this in the Washington state case, then the Paleto nature is still somewhat similar to Northern California, as Northern Cali is actually not the typical sunny, palm trees and beaches climate that people most often associate with the state. Northern California actually has a lot more in common with the Pacific Northwestern states than its own state's southern region. The second fact that supports Paleto Bay being in Northern California is the time that it takes you to travel there. Anyone who has played the car transporting mission, driving a truck from Los Santos to Paleto Bay, knows how incredibly long it actually takes to get to Paleto Bay if you drive at a normal speed. To get to Paleto Bay, you also have to cross the Cassidy Creek Bridge, which is a one-of-one version of the Bixby Creek Bridge in real life. And it is an almost 6-hour drive from LA just to get to the bridge. It is no doubt that Paleto Bay is supposed to be far, very far from Los Santos. Franklin even says it himself while trying to hunt down the Bigfoot.
I'm a long way from South Los Santos.
If we now take a look at the Californian map, there is a town called Crescent City that is basically as far north as you can go inside the Cali state. And I have to admit, from all the videos I could find from the internet, this town seems to be somewhat similar to Paleto Bay, a small coastal settlement with a rather slow lifestyle and a weird focus on fishing. But despite all this supporting evidence, there is also equally as much evidence talking against Paleto Bay being in Northern Cali. The most obvious contradiction for at least the OG fanbase of GTA is that to get from Los Santos to Northern California, you also have to drive through San Fierro, aka San Francisco. But as we know, San Fierro is nowhere to be seen in GTA 5. And by that, I don't mean that San Fierro doesn't exist in GTA 5, which it most likely does due to San Fierro Air aircrafts landing in the LSIA, not to mention Lester directly talking about San Fierro in the Doomsday Heist.
First it's $1 million apartments in San Fierro holes, then your coffee costs $4 a cup.
Rather, it means that the map just doesn't include San Fierro as a city, since the city itself is too far north. This is also a perfect time to mention that against general understanding, GTA 5 doesn't take place in the whole state of San Andreas, but rather just the southern part of it. Hence why auto sites in the game are named Southern San Andreas Autos and not just San Andreas Autos. Upon further digging, the community has actually located areas that look similar to Paleto Bay. One of these places is Morro Bay, California. Now, Morro Bay is by far what most people believe to be the real-life counterpart of Paleto Bay. And I have to admit, there is a good reason for it. While most small coastal towns in California are, for a non-Californian, basically all the same, then Paleto Bay and Morro Bay both have a very distinctive land body on their beach. And that is the weirdly humongous rock that both towns seem to share. The populations of both towns are also somewhat similar, with Paleto Bay having just over 4,000 people and Morro Bay having around 10,000 respectively. Unfortunately, like Crescent City, Morro Bay also has contradictions that talk against it being an in real life counterpart to Paleto. The most obvious contradiction has to do with the earlier mentioned Bixby Creek Bridge. In GTA 5, the bridge is south of Paleto Bay, meaning you always have to cross it, but in real life the bridge is further north than the town of Morro Bay itself. So if you come from LA, you don't actually ever cross the same bridge on your drive to Morro. That bridge doesn't really leave us with very many options to determine the location of Paleto Bay, since it has to be south of San Francisco and north of the Bixby Creek Bridge. It is only this strip of the western coast that is still available to us. From my research, the most similar town to Paleto on this small strip is a town by the name of Monterey. Monterey is yet another coastal settlement with a large focus on both fishing as well as food production, similar to Paleto Bay's Cluckenbell factory. Still, Monterey is almost 10 times bigger than Paleto Bay, having a population of over 30,000 people. So where does all this leave us? We have already found out that there are a bunch of similarities with Paleto Bay in 3 different in real life coastal towns: Crescent City, Morro Bay and Monterey, all located inside the state of California. Every single one of these 3 has something that assimilates them very closely to our beloved Paleto Bay. And to be honest, I think this is completely intentional. Paleto Bay is not an exact location in real life. Rather, it is supposed to represent the most stereotypical West Coast town in the United States. From purely the looks of the town, it is Morro Bay that seems to have the most in common with the town. If you take into account the climate and nature that surrounds Paleto Bay, it is most similar to the North Californian town of Crescent City. And if you want to have an exact location of the town, the location of Monterey is the closest that you will get. I know that this is most likely not the definitive answer that you were looking for, but it is by all measurements the most reasonable conclusion that we can actually make of the town. Now again, this is just the answer that my entire research ultimately came up with, which means it can't be taken as a 100% correct information. It is completely normal for some of you guys to have completely different opinions about the whereabouts of Paleto Bay. If you have any such different opinions, definitely let us know in the comments down below. Anyway, that is it for this video. If you did enjoy, make sure to also check out my other documentaries about the GTA universe. Thank you for watching and I'll see you guys in the next video.